We are here today with Geoff Fallon, the VP of Clinical and Business Applications at MaineHealth. Geoff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, MaineHealth has been on a 9-year journey between 2012 and 2021 to implement 10 hospitals on Epic. MaineHealth is now focusing on projects that will bring improved care team experience and operational efficiency to your workflow. You've mentioned, Geoff, that your largest efforts right now entail reimagining your laboratory information system, again, based on Epic Beaker, and a reimplementation of your ERP system, including a shift to the cloud. Would you tell our listeners a little bit about that project?
Sure. I think there really are two largest initiatives right now, and we have a fairly complex lab environment. Part of MaineHealth is a lab organization called Nordics. They have a core lab. They also operate our hospital labs and have their own independent reference lab. So, uh, over the years, we've grown a fairly complex IT environment and supporting them. And really, the way that we deliver IT has changed, and it's time for us to take a step back, look at it, and rebuild that entire IT infrastructure for the future. So we're in the middle of that right now, and our goals there are really simplification, supportability, and making sure that what we deliver is the best for both our users of services and in terms of our clinicians, our lab team, care team members, and also our patients.
Could you go into a concrete example for the benefit of listeners about one use case where you've been improving operational efficiency or the care team experience?
I mean, I think I'll give some simple ones in that over the years our reference lab business you had some different IT systems. So a patient that was seen as part of the reference business, and then a patient who came into the hospital, the provider in the hospital may not be able to see any of the lab results from that reference lab business. So now we're really re-envisioning the architecture and say this is all one giant lab system, and so we can any sort of service line that patient is seen at, we now have their lab results available to any clinician's fingertips.
There's somewhat of a unified care record for many different data inputs. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then I think the other thing we're looking at is really when you have less systems and less integration, you can work on streamlining workflows to make things like lab add-on tests easier to order, or a cancellation easier to schedule, or to give the lab the ability to have patients do online appointment scheduling. These are all things that we've either implemented recently or will be coming with this re-envisioning and reimagining of our lab IT infrastructure.
It's interesting, Geoff, that you mentioned one of your priorities is to improve the care team experience. A lot of times, healthcare delivery systems are focusing on improving the patient experience, but actually providing an improved experience for the provider care team, being physicians, nurses, other sort of administrative support. How have you found that? Well, first of all, why has improving care team experience been a priority? And second, how have you gone about improving the experience, identifying where you want to which steps you want to prioritize?
Yeah, and I think in my mind and many of ours, the care team experience and the patient experience are intrinsically linked, in that if I make it easiest for our users to order the right labs at the right time with as many options, it's going to make the patient experience better. They're going to show up at the lab. That test is going to be waiting for a phlebotomist to draw. They're going to get their results quickly. So I think we've focused on care team experience, knowing that we need to make sure that we allow our users the ability to order the right test the right time with as little complication as possible. And that will improve the patient experience as well.
Have you created any sort of feedback loops in order to incorporate clinician input into the redesign of their workflows?
I mean, I think it starts with our inclusion of our CMIO on our executive steering committee. Oftentimes, historically, at this organization, the lab operated the lab and IT operated without a lot of clinical input from the physician side. And I think we've really tried to make sure that we're rectifying that. We have both our CMIO and CNIO are involved in our lab work right now to make sure that we have a strong clinical voice in driving the work. When you're looking at something as fundamental as how your lab information systems work, it is a really far-reaching impact. We want to make sure that we get as many voices as part of the project to make sure that we're improving. We're taking this opportunity to really improve the workflow for all the users.
Pivoting a bit to another topic, but on the same topic of where you're going as an organization, I understand that MaineHealth is planning a refuel with Epic, which will look similar to the current EHR, but it will be more streamlined and more efficient for future support. What do you envision that project entailing?
So I think the genesis of that project is us understanding that the way that we need to support our EHR needs to shift. Many of us implemented EHRs years ago, and really at the time made a lot of decisions based on our organization or our users. And now we're realizing that we need to be more efficient. There's more cost pressure in this industry than there ever has been before. The pandemic has really highlighted that we need to be as efficient as we can. So we're going to work with Epic and go through a refuel process to really look at have we built everything as efficiently as possible? Are we leveraging the newest and best build that's available from our vendor? Because we need to be able to support this. We need to be able to provide the best, newest features, and we need to be able to support it in a much more efficient manner. And we know that we've kind of, when you start an EHR implementation, you often don't start it with the idea of long-term supportability in mind. So we're going to need to go back and revisit some decisions we've made in the past and really streamline things to make it
Can you give me
easier.
Can you give me and our listeners an example of what sort of decision you might have made differently when you first onboarded with Epic a few years ago, had you been thinking of long-term sustainability?
Yeah, I would say one would be, just the way that we build our users, right? So, as a new hospital came on, they may have said, our medical assistants do that differently. And at the time we said, great, well, we'll add you a new role for your hospital's medical assistants. And then next thing you know, you have 10 different ways to assign a medical assistant their security in our EHR. And when a new one gets hired, we're trying to do our best to assign them correctly. Or maybe, we have other areas where as you bring on a new physical therapy group, they say, well, I want to do my documentation differently. And we say, great, well, we'll rebuild this for you. And now all of a sudden I have two different ways that you can document a physical therapy note. And when, again, a new person starts, it's really hard to train them on what the right way to do it is.
So it sounds like, had you been planning for long-term sustainability when you first did an Epic Go Live, you would have presented a more standardized approach and would have been less flexible with the different requests of different user groups resulting from M&A. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, for us, I don't think we look at it as a loss of flexibility. I think we look at it more like if we get everybody together and make the decision once, it just makes it so that everybody can work smoother and cleaner going forward. I think sometimes you try and accommodate a lot of requests, and what you end up with at the end is a lot of people who get what they want, but then when you step back and look at it as the sum of all of those decisions you made, you realize, wow, if I had made some of those decisions differently, it would be a lot clearer how to log in and do your job right now. And sometimes, we haven't made it that clear on how to get your actual work done.
Well, that's a good lesson learned. I know that many CIOs listening right now have gone live on whether it be Epic or Cerner or Allscripts, some EHR system in the last decade or two, and maybe asking themselves quite the same questions as you. How do you address the need for more efficiency and cost savings, and the balance of meeting the needs of different requests of stakeholders with the needs of the whole system to have a streamlined, efficient, and standardized process is, I think, a question that many different CIOs will be balancing or at least trying to address in their minds. Speaking about different kind of needs and balancing different responsibilities, Geoff, you're transitioning off the board of directors of Health InfoNet, which is the operator of the state of Maine's statewide health information exchange, or HIE. What's your relationship between MaineHealth and Health InfoNet, and how are you balancing those relationships in your own professional career?
So our MaineHealth role with Health InfoNet is we are the largest contributor of data to the statewide HIE. MaineHealth is the largest health care organization in the state. We've partnered with Health InfoNet to make sure that we have always had someone from MaineHealth on the board of directors, really as their largest kind of contributor of data and also user of their data. It's been helpful for us to have someone who can advocate and make sure that that we're reviewing kind of how we use the system. I think Health InfoNet in general is very proud of the fact that they were one of, on the leading edge of really successful regional healthcare information exchanges. They have a great track record of, getting data from most of the major organizations in the state. And then, so their participation is excellent. And the ability to use that data to drive care is really excellent as well. So we have been, from the outset, happy to be making sure that we're contributing as much data as we can to creating that statewide repository of patient data.
Do you have any use cases that you're able to share about how MaineHealth has been using information from Health InfoNet, for example, a particular patient's care journey and how that could have gone awry if not for the information made available through the HIE?
I think I don't have single patients prepared, but I think when you look at our usage statistics, you can tell that people are using it to drive care on a daily basis. The way that we are connecting for healthcare now, it has really grown in the past few years. Maine has now connected to an organization in all 50 states as far as sharing healthcare data. Our providers and our care teams use Health InfoNet data to check, particularly in areas that have multiple healthcare facilities. It is a great tool to be able to see exactly what is happening outside the walls of your institution. And I think we're all excited for things like TEFCA that are coming in the future, the Trusted Exchange Framework, to see if we can make that make the idea of collaborating with our peers across the industry even better and make that data more able to be exchanged and really consumed into one electronic health record instead of just viewed in a centralized hub.
So you said that one reason why MaineHealth would always like to have a representative on the board of directors for Health InfoNet is because MaineHealth is one of the largest contributors to and users of Health InfoNet's data. Do you have any examples you could share of something that you have, on behalf of MaineHealth, have advocated for, some sort of position that you have sought to advance within the context of the board of directors of Health InfoNet?
Um, I think a lot of it has been around the structure. Um, I think we have some unique concerns around things like cybersecurity. Um, as the largest player, and the large contributor of data, I mean, I think we have the most at risk as far as data that we're contributing. I think that's been a conversation that we've been working to advance. And, I think everybody in the industry has this is a topic that we talk about every day, and how much data do you want to let outside your walls? Because all of those, all that data is now outside of your control. And I think we've been kind of on the edge of advancing that conversation.
So how have you been safeguarding data, and how do you determine how much data to let outside your walls?
I think I'd really have to phone a friend to answer that question and talk to
Yeah.
our chief information security officer.
Yeah. All right. Well, so cybersecurity is an issue, and making sure that the I guess that only that how do you, I mean, is there a way to draw the line? How would you distinguish between information that you think clinicians should have access to outside your walls, and what may be the boundary of what's appropriate to share that you may want to keep inside? Do you have a sense of how to draw that line?
Yeah, I mean, I think to us, it comes down to, are we going to send data to an outside data store like a regional health information exchange, or do we want to be part of something like TEFCA that is really more of a point-to-point connection? And I think we as an industry are kind of feeling our way through that. I think if we had our way, we would want to be more in that point-to-point connection environment. The hard part is then you're missing some of the things that Health InfoNet does. They have a great analytics package that can help with predictive models on things like risk of readmission, and they can cross multiple facilities in determining that risk. And a model, a point-to-point model misses that. So I think it's something that we're all feeling our way through right now, which is what is the best way for us to balance the risk of having our data outside our walls, um, but also, the abilities that come with having that kind of centralized data to be able to run analytics on. Um, and I don't think we have an
What
answer. I think it's something we continue to work through.
So we are approaching the end of this podcast episode, Geoff. I know it's come very quickly upon us. This has been a lot of fun. A general theme I'm picking up on over the course of this episode is, how are we balancing different things? How are we balancing the needs of meeting a individual department's request versus the needs of the whole organization to improve efficiency and streamline workflows? How do we balance the need to keep individual patient information secure with a point-to-point access versus balance the needs to care for population health? I guess as we wrap up this podcast episode, I'd like to ask you one final question, which is, how would you speak to CIOs around the country who are struggling to balance different priorities? Is there a way that you have developed to better balance your priorities?
I think us as leaders in healthcare IT, that's our goal right now, right? There are so many different competing priorities, and how do we balance them? I think our real challenge is to build strong governance and leverage that so that we have people to ask these questions to say, how do we make the decision? How do we balance our ability to be streamlined with that, to be able to customize, and how do we balance um, how do we balance all these different initiatives? And I do think that key is really having strong governance and strong communication with my peers. And we just have to continue to build those relationships and build strong governance to help us answer those questions.
Well, Geoff, you couldn't have said a better answer for a podcast, which is the best way to balance priorities is to have conversations, which is exactly what healthy data is all about. So, Geoff, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. This has been, for our listeners, Geoff Fallon of MaineHealth, the VP of Clinical and Business Applications. So Geoff, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.